Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. My name is Macy, and I am so excited that you are listening to the podcast today. I am going to be digging into the topic of loneliness. And before any clients feel singled out, I just want to let you know that this episode comes from there being some sort of theme in the air. There has been a theme in the air between friends of mine, family members, and lots of clients. This has just been a season where, for whatever reason, it's been coming up a lot. And I'm going to share some of those different reasons and real life examples of things that, I've been told people are feeling. But I'm also going to just share a whole plethora of things to think about when you're feeling the emotion of loneliness, because I think it's important to talk about. I, at times, have felt loneliness, and I know that there's a lot of people who, can be surrounded by great people in your life, and you still feel loneliness. And so we're going to get into all of that. Before we do, I want to just quickly say, if you missed the deadline to sign up for one-on-one private coaching back a couple weeks ago when it closed, I want to let you know, if you're not on my email list or you don't open emails or they go to junk and you don't check them, to be reminded that I have reopened one-on-one coaching enrollment. And the reason I did this is because the last, I would say, week and a half, 2 weeks have been some of the most challenging weeks of my life. And not so much because of what I'm enduring solely within myself, though there have been a few hard, tug of wars. It's been chaotic in just people that I love, and so many things happening at such a rapid pace, back to back to back to back, and it feeling so emotionally overwhelming. So I've had to practice a lot of my tools. And in this process of practicing my own tools, I've had so many moments where I've thought, I wish my coach was available on Marco Polo the way that I'm available to my clients who are either in the hybrid experience when they're in an active round, or one-on-one private coaching when they're in an active contract. Because something that I offer clients in addition to their once a week call is the ability to hop on Marco Polo if they feel like they're in some sort of maybe emergent situation or just something that they need to process. They can hop on Marco Polo and I'll get back with them. And it creates this very lax, laid back way to get coaching in the moment and support in the moment. And it's just what I've found for my clients is a very fast way that they grow, just because instead of waiting week to week and having to unload a bunch in their call and then have, maybe not a lot of time left to coach on stuff, Marco Polo is they can get it addressed as soon as it comes up. It's just been a very helpful tool. And so in the midst of me having 2 terrible back-to-back weeks, I thought, there isn't a resource I have or that I have found yet where I can just hop on and talk to my coach or therapist like this when I just need it on a random Wednesday, or when something else happens on a Friday and it feels like the final straw and I know I have to keep going, but I just want to say it and I don't want to dump it on the people that I love most, because the people I love most are the ones dealing with all this extra. That's hard for me to see them like this, So anyways, I wanted to let you know, one-on-one coaching is temporarily open. It does start the week of September 8th, which we are very close to inching up to. And I will need to produce a one-on-one coaching workbook for you, as well as if you opt into human design, which is not required but an option, you need to give me plenty of time to let my business partner in that know so she can prep your stuff. So if you're on my email list, you will find those emails. You'll also find a special payment plan. A few ladies reached out to me and said, it's a gut yes for me, but financially I need a little bit of grace. And with that, I decided to offer an extended payment plan, but you're not going to see it if you're just going to MacyRenee.com and then one-on-one coaching. You're only going to see it if you're on my email list and you're getting the emails. And so if you do hear this podcast, want one-on-one coaching, need the 6-month payment plan option, get in touch with me via email, either coaching@MacyRenee.com, or get in touch with me on social media so that way I can extend you that link if you're not already on my email list. Okay. All right, let's dig into loneliness. So the thing about loneliness is we can feel this in so many ways for a multitude of reasons, okay? It's an emotion I think that we don't talk about enough, loneliness, and honestly make it real as to how many people feel this and probably how often and frequently people feel this. But it is definitely something I know that any listener here can relate to. And I just want to share some of the things that have been coming up for people I know and love. And I'm sure it's not an all-inclusive list, but it does, it should paint the picture of a little bit of why you may be feeling this and where you may be feeling this. So a big thing that's been happening for several of my clients personally is their kids are fleeing the nest, right? They've flown from the nest because they're moving on to maybe college, they're growing up. And this can be a very jarring experience to have. Something that I shared with one of my clients is, although I am not a mother yet, with a lot of my childhood stuff, I was very much involved in different ways with my sisters when they were younger and even when they were teenagers and even in young adulthood, just because we had just a lot that we were juggling as kids and young adults with our family dynamic. And I will tell you that when I hired my coach, I was very overwhelmed because I was about 23, maybe 23, 24 years old, I think, when I hired her. And something that we had to coach on a lot was me releasing the responsibility to let my sisters grow up and figure things out on their own. Because if you're an older sister, specifically, or an older sibling, I think I'm going to do an episode solely on older sister life. You know that you are like a mini mom, whether you have had a wonderful upbringing that's very supportive or you have had one with a lot of trauma and hardship. And I'm on the latter of the trauma and hardship. And when you are that oldest sibling, you kind of make it your responsibility to be a mini mom and a caretaker and a provider and do what is necessary. And for me, that is amplified because of our upbringing. So when I started coaching with my coach, it was a big deal for me to learn how to let them grow into adulthood and not feel as responsible as a mother figure. And in doing that, I felt a version of empty nest syndrome. I know, again, I am not a mother to children biologically at this time, but it was a grieving point for me. It was very, very difficult because of how I didn't realize how much I would throw myself to comfort them. Like, you know what I mean? Throw myself into whatever they needed to make sure things were okay, until it was kind of like an assignment through my coach to say, at the end of the day, even with all of the trauma, they do have parents, and you're putting a lot of weight on your shoulders that is, creating a lot for you, like just a lot of emotional stress and mental stress. And of course you want to make sure they're okay. And of course, because you've put yourself in this role like a parent, you're going to worry like a parent would. But you've given yourself that responsibility, and that was really, really hard for me. But I say all of this to say that I can empathize to a certain extent with the grief of watching, someone you love kind of flap their own wings and having to watch them grow and fail and mess up and still being there whenever they really need you, but just that emptiness that you kind of feel inside. So I can only empathize and imagine what you mamas and even dads are feeling if your children, especially if there are no more children in the home that are, younger, where they've fled the nest. And that's been a big theme this year for many of my clients. Their children are kind of on their own and they're feeling the effects of it, whether their kids are, still living in the house or very close, and not even that far away. So I that's one way of many that we can feel loneliness. Then there's what I like to refer to this as the crowded loneliness. And this is when you are surrounded by so many people, right? Whether it is family, it could be friends, it could be coworkers, it could be people at the grocery store. You could be walking through a parking lot and seeing hundreds of cars, but inside you feel lonely. You're surrounded by people, yet the core feeling is that you don't really feel seen. You don't really feel understood. You don't actually feel like people really know you. And I actually think one of my sisters maybe posted something about this week where it talked about, it was like a meme. I really feel like I read this, and it was something along the lines of you can even work at the same location for, a decade or longer, be surrounded by people who need you and utilize your talents at work all the time, but don't know you. They don't really see you. They don't really know anything about you or your life or your dynamic or anything like that. And that can feel lonely. So crowded loneliness is, I'm surrounded by all of these people. And so ideally, I shouldn't feel lonely because physically there's a lot of warm bodies around me. But what I'm experiencing internally is that I feel unseen and I don't really feel heard or paid attention to or cared for or loved or seen the way that I want to be seen. So that is another thing. And that may resonate with several of you as well. How many of you are experiencing crowded loneliness? And some of you may be experiencing all of these by the time we get through them. And then another type of loneliness, I think that a lot of, people feel, maybe men feel this too, but I know like whenever I talk to my husband, like this has been kind of a thing for him. So I'm sure that it's not just reserved to whether, it's one sex or the other, more so than the other. But I do know from coaching women that women will talk about we'll call it a friendship ache, where you've grown and, maybe in your younger years you had those groups of friends, but as you grow and evolve and change, as you get maybe married or have kids or don't have kids, just there's this longing for finding your people who really get you and see you. And for many women, what I've found, no matter what their age is, in their 30s, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, they have a hard time finding those people, those friends, the people that have common interest, the people that they enjoy spending time with, doing things that they're really into these days, the friends that understand, maybe what they've been through, what they're going through, because they're a few steps ahead or they're in a similar kind of life stage, I guess you could say. So I've had a lot of clients experience this too, where some of them are like they're growing closer in their faith to God or spirituality, and that feels lonely because they don't have like friends that are on a similar path. There's also the motherhood journey, right? Once you have children, there is a level of isolation and loneliness, not only because your whole entire life has changed and is revolving around this new little human or humans, but, if you don't have friends that are also in that stage, it can be very hard to feel truly seen and truly understood until other friends join you in that journey or you find groups of friends in that. Same thing with maybe divorce, okay? If you were married for a very long time and then things went, wrong in your marriage for whatever reason and you end up divorced, that can feel lonely because now you're adjusting to being the person that feels like you're on the outs around people who look madly in love or are madly in love, and you feel like the third wheel. If you get invited to dinner, but it's like a couple's dinner, then you kind of feel weird being there because you don't have a significant other. And so there can be loneliness in that. And I've had clients in that season. I've also had clients who are in relationships and, have some family, but again, kind of are experiencing a little bit of crowded loneliness even in that, where there's an ache because I have these people that I'm supposed to feel extremely connected with, family, a spouse, and I don't. And I don't know what that means for me. So, there are so many forms of loneliness that can take shape, and I'm sure there's way more that I'm not even remembering to mention, but the bottom line of this is to remember, like, if you are feeling loneliness, it does not mean that you're broken. It's not proof of anything that you are broken or messed up or that anything's wrong with you. It's ultimately proof that you're human, because at the core of all of this, we are going to experience the emotion of loneliness. Nothing has gone wrong when you are feeling lonely. I need to repeat that for a second. Nothing has gone wrong when we are feeling lonely. And I'm going to get into why this is so important and what I really want you to walk away with and take with you in your little toolbox when you are feeling this loneliness, okay? Because again, just to drive it home, loneliness. I want you to really, really say this with me. Loneliness is not a problem. Loneliness is not a problem, okay? So we're going to frame this in terms of like mindset and emotional intelligence, but also where you can grow in this and where you can give yourself grace. So it's really important to remember that loneliness is a signal, not an identity. Okay, it may feel like an identity, especially if you've been feeling lonely for a very long time. And maybe you've even made it unintentionally a part of your identity because you have a lot of history where you have felt alone. So now it feels true that you're just alone in life. That's your whole identity. I'm alone. Nobody likes me. I'm alone, right? And if you look around and you don't feel seen and you don't feel heard and you don't feel safe and you don't feel like there's a bunch of people or even a few people that are with you, truly with you, you will reinforce that story of loneliness. But again, I have to tell you, loneliness is a signal, not an identity. So if you currently are holding on to loneliness as an identity, okay, if you're currently doing that, I need you to take a deep breath and release that it has anything to do with your identity. It is a signal. It is nothing more than a signal, and it is an emotion that can come and go if you let it. If you make it your identity, it's going to feel present all the time, as opposed to if you let it be an emotion that you feel, even if you feel it quite often. You have to use the language of that is how I feel, and not in the language of this is what's true all the time, okay? So you need to find the examples of when you feel surrounded by love or when you do feel loved, even if it's far and few between, because you want the ebb and flow of loneliness to go the way it's meant to go. It's humanness. We're all going to experience it. And unless you make it an identity, it doesn't have to stick around and be this super, loud kind of pulsing feeling that's constantly running through your veins. So we have to be able to distinguish that loneliness feeling from aloneness, because what you might, really be missing is the difference between the two of these. So let's talk about this, because I'm going to tell you, aloneness is something that I enjoy, but it is a little bit different than loneliness. Okay, so let's talk about this. So aloneness is something that can be very peaceful and grounding and something that you choose. It's chosen, okay? And what this means is those moments where you need to be alone, you need the solace, or you want the solace because it's going to recharge you, or it's going to be the piece for you to like clear your mind. It's a good thing. Like aloneness can be a really good thing. And so sometimes we do need to choose aloneness because of what we can learn from it. And I'm going to get more into that a little bit later. Then we have loneliness, which is what a lot of people experience. And that is the internal experience of feeling disconnected. Okay? So you can feel disconnected for a multitude of reasons. Maybe you'll resonate with one of these that I'm about to say. Maybe it will be multiple. But a great self-awareness check-in here is, am I lonely for people? So am I experiencing loneliness because I am lonely for people? And it could be I'm surrounded by people, but I don't feel connected to those people. Remember, loneliness is an internal experience of disconnection. So am I lonely for people in that I don't feel connected to people in my life or outside of my life, even if they're walking around me, there's a lot of warm bodies, okay? Another form of loneliness can be, am I lonely for purpose? Okay, we need something that is going to drive us to wake up every day, to feel excited to go and do the things we need to do. If you don't feel purposeful in your life, whether that is career or your family or something that you're really looking forward to, your goals, it's going to be really easy to kind of rot. We'll call it couch rotting, brain rotting. Like if we're not growing, we're dying. You're growing or you're dying, okay? And a lot of times we get into this kind of coasting that happens where we're just kind of like, meh, things are not good, but they're not totally bad, or, things are good, but they're not great. And that over time, feeling that for too long of time, because humans need purpose, humans need to feel growth. If you were lonely for purpose, that is going to be something that is like an inner ache because you're disconnected from something that wakes you up in the morning and gets you excited. My business wakes me up in the morning and gets me excited. My clients wake me up in the morning and gets me excited. I'm sure whenever the time comes when children are in our life, they will get me up even when I am tired and mummy-like because trust me, I like my sleep. So I will be like a mummy. But that is going to be a whole level of drive. I wouldn't be surprised if my business triples, quadruples, or does way more than it does now with children when they are potentially the drive, because now I'm providing for someone and I'm creating life for someone outside of myself and my husband, right? So we need that. What is that thing? And then another thing to check in with yourself with loneliness, am I lonely, like seeking out, like, what's the best way to describe this? Am I lonely for myself? Meaning that I don't even know myself. Now, if you're a longtime podcast listener, then you know this is where I was right before I met my life coach. Like loneliness for myself, meaning I felt disconnected from myself. I did not feel like I knew who I even was, what I even wanted. I had done all of the quote unquote right things. I could check all of the boxes of what I was supposed to do. I graduated high school. I got a part-time job to start caring and providing for myself, to be able to make that transition to move out of the house even for college. I started college. I graduated college with a bachelor's in health science. Then I was still in grad school. I graduated grad school with a master of science in occupational therapy. Then I worked for 6 years as a pediatric occupational therapist. And in the midst of all of those things that anybody could look at and say, that's amazing, that's incredible. You have 2 degrees by the time you're 23. You're doing all of it right. You've been with your high school sweetheart. Everything on paper looks amazing. I can tell you that I was lonely. Okay? I very much felt like those scenes where you're standing. It's kind of like, those scenes where someone is standing like in the middle of New York City and they have you just like that person in the middle, and all the people walking by are like at supersonic speed, and the taxis are supersonic speed, and you can see like the lights on the buildings changing, and like all this time passes, but you feel like you're standing still. That's like the best description of what it felt like to be 23 years old for me, because I was doing all the things right and I was checking all the boxes, and I just still didn't feel fulfilled or like I was living my life the way I wanted to, for me, to make me happy. And that was a very challenging thing. So I was lonely for myself. And then I met my coach, I think it was 24, and started learning all of the tools, many of the tools you all are learning here in the podcast, or if you're a client, you're learning even more tools than people learn on the podcast. And when I really learned myself, that solved for a lot of loneliness, not all of it, but it allowed me to feel empowered for myself so I could solve for the other areas of loneliness. Okay. So that's just a little check-in to ask yourself, am I lonely for people? Am I lonely for purpose? Am I lonely for myself? Maybe it's one or two or all three. Okay. Now, here's the next part of this. We need to talk about pros and cons, because there are pros to being lonely, and there are also things that we need to consider when we are lonely. Okay. So let's start with the cons, the things that are not the best when we are maybe ignoring or pushing down our loneliness. So when loneliness is left unchecked, we can become very resentful, very bitter, hopeless, or even self-sabotage. And I think this is something that I have seen my clients do, and oftentimes when they are hiring me, is when loneliness is leading to doing things that they know are not leading them to their highest and best self, like the life that they want to have. It could be, I'm lonely, so I drink. I'm lonely, so I smoke. I'm lonely, so in the past I might have touched drugs, right? Or totally engulfed myself in things that I wouldn't normally do, like hooking up with a bunch of people when that's not what I want to do. This loneliness can lead to overeating or binge watching a lot of TV or scrolling a lot on social media, like being more interested in other people's lives than you're interested in living your own life. That was a huge thing for me. So when I was 23, a huge fight of mine with my, at the time boyfriend, who is now my husband, and something that my family would give me feedback on all the time was the constant need for me to be on my phone. And phones were not near as addicting even 10 years ago as they are now. It was, phones even in 10 years have come a very long way with what you have access to. And for me, I was on my phone all the time, rotting, because I didn't have purpose in my own life. I had things that I was doing. I had checked the boxes, but I didn't feel purposeful and lit up by my own life. And you might be asking yourself, do I have to feel lit up by my own life? You don't have to, but I would think you would want to. This is not your practice life. This is one life. You don't get another shot, right? You're this is it. You are in the running of the life that you are creating for yourself, and you're the one creating it. So if you're not happy and you're moping around, you need to grab it by the horns and do something about it. And for me, I was self-sabotaging. I was so much more interested in what other people were doing on social media than what I was doing in my own life. And the time that I would spend engulfed in other people's life was time that I was taking out of making decisions in my own life. So we don't want to ignore this loneliness and become that bitter person that's judging, or that resentful person that's in victim mentality, wallowing, feeling sorry for ourselves, feeling hopeless all the time, self-sabotaging. We don't want to be that person, okay? The next thing about this is it can absolutely distort our perception and create a lot of false thoughts that are not true. So I've seen this in clients, right, where they think because they're feeling loneliness and they've been feeling it for a very long time, could be months, could be years, could be decades, they will have created thoughts in their mind that no one cares. No one cares about them. No one cares how they feel. No one cares, okay? That's not always true. That's not always true. And when you're holding on to the fact that you think no one cares, especially this, right? There's usually people who care. So I'm going to speak just for a second specifically for like anybody that coaches in any of my groups. If you're in a coaching group of mine, whether that is the Equip Society, the hybrid experience, you've been in any mini programs where there's a group experience, we care, okay? When you get into coaching and you are in any of my containers, I want to let you know if you're a client in there and you've met other people, we care about your success. We care about your goals. We care about what you want. We want to hold you accountable to that, and we care. But what's really easy to do, because you maybe don't know all of those women on a deep level, or you've never met them. Some of them maybe you have if you've done any of my retreats. I absolutely think you all should come to the retreat. The next one's in Miami in April of 2026. But all of this to say, it's really easy to look around at your immediate family and friends and get into this story of no one cares. I'm always left out. Nobody cares about me. Nobody loves me. And forget that you are speaking in an absolute that absolutely shuts out other people caring for you. Now, let me be totally clear. You may not think it's fantastic that we care about you because we're not the ones you want. Like you want your husband to care, or your wife to care, or your sister to care, your brother, your mother, your dad, your grandma, your, best friend. You want them to care and you want to feel loved by them. But it is very important that you are not walking around with a distorted perception of a story that you have repeated in your own head your entire life of no one cares about me, right? And it's this big story where, especially if you're in my group containers where we're all looking at you like, what are you talking about? Like, we are here to fight for you as hard as you will fight for yourself. Sometimes we're going to be fighting for you harder than you're fighting for yourself because we see your potential and know what's on the other side of doing this work and sticking with it. So we might not be the people you want caring about you, but you have to trust that we do, or we wouldn't keep pouring into you the way that we pour into you. And this is not directed at anybody specific. It's because a lot of times this comes up, and I giggle about it sometimes in client calls, but clients will get into the story that nobody cares. And it's because the immediate people around them are not showing them or exemplifying the things that they want exemplified to feel as if those people care. Like, they may show it in different ways, or they may not show it in any of the ways that my clients may want. And so they will talk in this absolute and be like, nobody cares about me. And I'm like, that's not true, right? It's not true. I care. Any client who's crossed my path, whether you've sent me a message on Instagram, you've never been a client, and you've said, I listened to the podcast and I am working really hard on XYZ that I've learned, or you've been in a freebie but never been a client, or you have crossed my, that path and you are a client, you've been a client for years, you've been a client for weeks. If you've been in my life or have introduced yourself into my life in any way, I care. And I just need to tell you that. If you have popped into a Facebook message, or you've done a consult and you've told me about things you've wanted to achieve in your life and then you never went through with getting it, like you never went through with maybe, taking it by the horns, signing up for coaching, and us working on it. Maybe you work with somebody else, but I will tell you that there are nights I still go to bed thinking of people that I've never even worked with that told me their dream. And I will think, I hope that they have gotten it. I hope that they're at least working on it. It matters to me. If you say it out loud, you're saying it out loud because it's something in your system that you want. So if you've said it out loud to me at any point, I want you to know I will remember it probably till I go to my grave, because that's how seriously I take the things that any of my clients say. 1000%. That is from the bare bones of me, okay? If you've said it to me, if it's something in your self-concept, if it's something that you have spoken out in a dream that you think is unreachable even, if you've said it to me, I want you to have it, and I care. So I may not be the person that you want to care about you. And maybe the people in my containers are not also the people you mainly want caring for you. But don't get that BS story in your head that no one does. It's just maybe not the people you would expect or that you wish did most. And you have to tell yourself that sometimes even those stories of thinking they don't care is not true. It's just that maybe they don't show it the way you think that they should. Okay? Whew. Okay. Sorry. I had to go on that tangent for a second because that happens sometimes. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't, just coach people because you've paid me. Although, yes, I know that is my livelihood. And, that might feel in your mind like the only reason I'm rooting for you. But I will tell you that is not the case. I even have people that I went to school with back in high school and college that told me a dream of theirs, and it will still live in my mind. Like, it keeps me up at freaking night. Like, I want you to have whatever it is that is in your life. And if you're working with me, we are going to get it. I promise you. If you're going to be working with me, I'm going to hold you accountable and we're going to go get it. Okay, so let's talk about the pros of loneliness. Okay. The pros of loneliness. It's when you feel lonely, it is highlighting. So think of it as like a flashlight pointing to what you truly value. Okay? Why are you lonely? Do you feel like you want friendship? Do you feel like you want more emotional depth, more company, more outings, more memories? What is it? It's pointing to something. Loneliness is pointing to something. So if you're feeling lonely in your marriage, what is that pointing a flashlight to that you value within a marriage that you don't have? Same thing with a relationship with your family or your siblings or your kids, or even at work or even outside of work, your friends, your best friends. Maybe if you don't have friends, what do you value? Loneliness is a signal. Remember, it's a signal. So it's going to highlight something that you truly value and don't feel you have. But it's showing you what's important to you. And it's often the doorway to self-discovery. Okay? So when I was lonely on the inside, that is what drove me to make the decisions that I made to hire my coach. Hiring my coach allowed me to shift my entire perception that changed the whole trajectory of my life, as well as meet some of the best people and best friends that I have to this day. If I had never allowed myself to feel loneliness and I had never done anything about the loneliness, I would not even have some of the best friends I have today, nor would I be speaking to you on this podcast. Loneliness was a beautiful gift because I didn't make it my identity. I allowed it to be a feeling that would come and go. And every time it would come and go, or before it would go and it would come, I would look at what I valued. So when I felt lonely and it felt like hell, it felt awful, I would be like, okay, what's going on in my life? How do I change this? And then I would go and change that. And then there would be something else to work on. And I'd be like, okay, I don't like this. How do I change this? Okay, I don't like that. How do I change that? And it was just a journey of changing and course correcting that led to a bunch of beautiful things. Loneliness is not the enemy unless you make it the enemy, okay? So it can absolutely be a doorway to deeper connection, which is exactly what happened in my life. Not only did loneliness and not becoming it, but feeling it allow me a deeper connection with myself, it allowed me a deeper connection with everybody in my life. It gave me everything that I have in my life. Loneliness is not the enemy here, okay? Another pro of loneliness is that it builds your resilience. It builds your creativity. It builds your spiritual grounding whenever you actually sit with it. Because here's what happens when you're lonely. You're alone with your thoughts, which is probably the scariest thing to a human being possible. Oh my God, it scares us to death being alone with our thoughts. It feels messy up in there. It feels horrible. It feels like trash. A lot of times it's more negative up there when it's running on autopilot than positive. So of course you feel like hell whenever you're alone, okay? Because all of that yucky muck is swimming around in your brain. And then because you don't have the emotional tolerance built up to deal with it or know what's going on, you then find a coping mechanism. You start drinking, you start overeating, you start smoking, you might do drugs, you might watch TV, you might, scroll on social media, binge watch something, you might hook up with a bunch of different people, even though that's not what you want long term. And it's all to try to fill the void of loneliness because you haven't built the tolerance for loneliness. Loneliness is not a problem. Loneliness is a signal. Loneliness, when you feel it, allows you to understand what's really going on. It's the flashlight. What's really going on? What do I value that I feel like I don't have? And in all of that, you build amazing skills. You become more resilient when you can sit through the loneliness without buffering, without any of those coping mechanisms. You become creative. How do I solve for this? What can I do to bring myself happiness, or, to work through the loneliness and let it be there? You become more creative. And again, with the whole spiritual grounding, you really learn what you're made of when you feel alone. And you have to surrender to that emotion, not cope with it in a way that's buffering, but really surrender to it and just allow yourself to be with it. You will probably learn the most profound things when you just allow loneliness. If you let all of that crap come up to your mind, and if you listen to earlier podcast episodes of mine, you've heard me talk about this. I recommend that everybody sets a timer on their phone or on their stove or your microwave or whatever. Set it for 20 minutes. If you can't do 20, at least do 5 or do 10. Put your phone far away to where you cannot just reach it and start scrolling mindlessly, okay? Put the TV remote away. Far away where you cannot reach it. Don't have snacks. Don't have a drink. Don't have anything. Sit on the floor, lay on the floor, sit on your couch. I don't care what it is. Don't have any distractions. Turn that timer on for 20 minutes and let yourself be bored. Let yourself be lonely. Let yourself notice what thoughts come up when you're not buffering or being little Miss Busybody, okay? Or little Mr. Busybody. Okay, you're going to find that a lot of thoughts you don't like come to the surface, and it makes you feel a lot of emotions you maybe don't want to feel. And loneliness may be one of the main ones. Instead of picking up your phone, turning on a TV, pouring a glass of wine, whatever you're wanting to do, you sit with it and you observe what is going on. Because only when you know what is going on and what you long for and what you want and what you're really feeling, can you go make the decision to get the help to change it. Okay? Me knowing what was going on in my brain when I was lonely and not knowing what to do with it is what allowed me to seek out the help that ended up changing the whole trajectory of my life and put people in my life that I never would have had otherwise. Memories, amazing experiences, okay? I'm grateful for loneliness. You can be grateful for loneliness as well. It's a wonderful thing, okay? Now, let's talk about, because I'm an emotional intelligence coach, we're going to talk about 5 different things, like 5 different skills, I guess you could say, that it will help with when you embrace loneliness. 1, emotional awareness. Let yourself feel it without judgment, okay? Become emotionally aware of what you've been holding on to that has been covered up or masked with busyness or, again, being surrounded by people. The next one is reality testing, and this is our ability to look at things more neutral. And what this means is that when you are actually allowing yourself to have loneliness, like, you have to also be able to ask yourself, is it true that no one cares? Because if your story is no one cares about me, that's not neutral, okay? This is what allows you to change distorted thoughts and go, that might not be true. Like, maybe you feel very lonely in your marriage. It doesn't mean your partner doesn't care about you. That just might be a story, right? But what is true? Maybe what is true is that you're not spending as much time together as you'd like to be, or you're spending time together, but maybe one or both of you are not as present as you would like it to be. You really have to be neutral in order to see and find the true problem, not put stories in your mind about, what you think is happening. No assumptions. Like, you want to get to the root of what's really going on. So this builds that emotional intelligence skill. It also builds assertiveness, because in order to get out of loneliness, like, let's say you want to make friends, you want this to change in your life, you don't want to feel this way all the time, you have to be willing to take small risks. You have to be willing to ask for connection. You have to get out of the house. If you're feeling loneliness because you don't have friends, guess what? There's a lot of places you can go meet someone. It can be at the gym. It could be at a coffee shop. It could be at the grocery store. And here's the thing. It doesn't mean that you're going to find your BFF when you go to the grocery store. But even an act of coming out of loneliness can be speaking to someone. Hi, how are you doing today? I do it all the time when I'm walking in my neighborhood. Hi, good afternoon. Sometimes it turns into a longer conversation because they see my cute little dog. He's 3 pounds, 10 years old, fully grown, vicious to bigger dogs, just totally sassy. And sometimes that will bring connection. Going to Pilates class has brought connection. I've made some good connections there and had some great conversations. Does it mean we're BFFs and we're getting coffee and hanging out for lunch? No. But in that moment, it is a connection. And connection helps a lot with loneliness. So don't also have some false expectations that, you're going to be assertive at a grocery store or a library or out on a walk and start talking up a few sentences and then suddenly make your next BFF. It doesn't always happen like that, but you do want to build the skill of assertiveness to meet people because you never know what it's going to turn into. Sometimes your own assertiveness can be, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to get on the website. I'm going to schedule a consult. I'm going to hire that therapist or I'm going to hire that coach. And then, you know what? I'm going to be brave and I'm going to sign up for that program or I'm going to sign up for that retreat. And then you meet people that way. And sometimes that ends up being a path. Okay? It doesn't matter how it happens. Doesn't matter if it's with me or someone else, but those things, being assertive, take control of your life. Allow yourself to feel crappy feelings as you're putting yourself out there. You can't wallow around and I feel lonely and then never do anything about it and expect it to change. That's called crazy. It's doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. It's insanity. Okay? Another skill, EQ skill specifically, that will grow is your self-expression. So when you feel lonely, when you go inward, okay, which means sitting with yourself with that timer or just allowing yourself to be in the loneliness, it can also be time where you journal everything that's on your mind. Like in those 20 minutes, get out a piece of paper. This doesn't have to be perfect. Get out a piece of paper and journal everything your brain is thinking, even things you think it doesn't make sense, even if it's from 28 years ago, like everything, journal. Draw, do art in that downtime where maybe you feel lonely. Have some honest conversations with yourself or with other people whenever you're feeling it. Like when you feel lonely, even if you're reaching out to an acquaintance and you ask them like, hey, do you have the capacity to hold some of the things that I've been feeling lately? And they say yes, you're building your self-expression skills because you're not just internalizing everything. Even journaling is self-expression skills. Because it's taking what is energetically being held in your body and putting it to paper, and that is moving the energy up and out. And last but not least, another EQ skill you will build with, allowing yourself to feel loneliness is optimism. If you allow it, if you remember that, loneliness is just a state, not a life sentence per se. Like you can be optimistic as to what good can come in your life when you're just allowing the ebb and flow of humanness. Allow the ebb and flow of humanness, okay? And here's where I'm going to leave you with. It's so important to sit with loneliness instead of rushing to escape it. I know you want to escape it because it doesn't feel good. I know you want to buffer because it doesn't feel good. But instead, notice what loneliness is teaching you. Be able to ask yourself, what am I truly wanting right now or craving right now? And I don't mean craving like food. I mean, what am I truly craving as far as companionship with maybe my spouse because I feel lonely and I'm in this marriage, or with a friend because I haven't seen them in forever, or I don't have friends and I just feel like I want friends. Like, what am I craving in companionship and meaning is in self-connection? What am I craving within myself? Like, where have I been letting myself down or self-betraying or masking what I want in life with the busyness of what everybody else needs from me? My husband, my kids, whatever. Like, where am I self-betraying and forgetting that it's also important for me to have a connection? Where do I feel lonely for myself, right? So you have to remember that, and remember that it's going to be small steps. It's going to be things like sitting with that and really understanding what it is that's coming up, reaching out instead of waiting or holding it all in. It's going to be joining communities, being assertive, putting yourself out there, like finding people and things that align with your values or your interest or what you want to be experiencing in your life. And it can be reconnecting even with things you've neglected because you've been saying like you're too busy or life's too crazy. It's like, what have you neglected as far as your passions or your hobbies or things you've really wanted for your life that you're not doing it? Loneliness does not mean that you are unlovable, unworthy, or any of those things. Okay? It's just a gentle signal that you desire more connection. Sometimes that's going to be with other people. Sometimes that's going to be with yourself. Sometimes that's going to be with your future and the future you want to create. Remember, if we're not growing, we're dying. If we're just coasting, it can feel great for a period of time, but nothing really changes in that kind of, pathway. Coasting really doesn't change a lot. It feels good for a period of time. So, just remember, if you're lonely, you're not being punished, and it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, but it's here to really teach you and guide you back to connection, no matter where your loneliness is coming from. So this is something that I hope helps you so deeply, especially because it's been coming up for so many different people. So I feel for you. I experience this as well. There's times where I feel surrounded by people and I feel lonely, and I have to go inward and ask myself, what is that? How do I solve for this? What do I do? What are some tools and strategies? And if you need help with that and you're not sure and you need someone who understands what you're going through or the work you want to do, and if you love the podcast and this work resonates with you and you're like, man, I wish that my friends understood, or I wish my friends, and I could have conversations around this. I wish there were people who were working on this stuff with me. Get into my coaching containers. Schedule a consult. That's where people are. Women that are loving this work have taken themselves from a podcast listener to a client, okay? And they're pushing themselves and they're learning skills in there. And then they're even pushing themselves to feel brave and meet each other in person when we do retreats. And it can be life-changing, like just even having a group of people who get you as far as emotional awareness work, okay, who are in all different stages. Some are new mommies. Some have been mommies for a very long time. Some kids are going off to college. Some kids are still in diapers. Some people have never had kids. Some people are exploring careers. Some people are getting married to their forever person. Some people are getting divorced. Like, there's so many ages and stages and ranges of women I'm working with, and yet everything that combines and connects everybody is the work that they value in creating a future that feels good for them and creating a present moment that feels enriching and good to them, no matter what stage they are in their life. And if that's what you've been needing and you've been feeling a loneliness and you're ready to find your people who love this kind of work, reach out for consults. I promise you I'll point you in the right direction and you will be so glad you did it. So glad, okay? All right, remember that one-on-one coaching is open for a short period of time. I'm going to ask that you sign up by September 1st, okay? If you need anything from me, like specifically the 6-month payment plan, which you will not see on my website, it's only gone out to my email list. If you're not on the email list or you're not reading emails, you need to reach out to me on social media for it, or you need to email me, which is coaching@MacyRenee.com. It will be in the show notes, okay? And you can email me there and say, I really want the link for 6 months. It's 10 weeks of coaching, one-on-one. You get a weekly 45-minute call. You also get 5 days of access Monday through Friday to Marco Polo me, so we can go back and forth. You get a workbook, and in this special contract round of one-on-one coaching, you can also choose to opt into human design if you've heard of it. If it's something that's of interest to you, you can get 4 sessions with my human design business partner. So if you're interested, just reach out. Okay, you have a little bit longer, and I would love to work with you. And other than that, I will see you next week. Goodbye. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at MacyRenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at MacyRenee.com anytime you want so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.